I would say I'm a city-rule of the electorate of the whole Roman Empire. Maybe entirely lost in most of you, but still. The idea is to have you all speak to one another. And my issue really is that you understand, all of you, the context of this meeting and how I am standing here. I got to know Dick and Alice because Alice and my mother worked at Bancroft Whiskey in San Francisco in the 60s and 70s. When Alice and Dick moved to Oakland, they were very friendly with my mother. My mother was retiring to England. I was off to Germany on a fellowship. Dick and Alice took us to the airport with a very long cocktail hour. And Alice and I took a really strong shine to one another. I mean, I think we kind of fell in love with each other. And she wrote, I wrote, and she offered when I came back to Berkeley, where I was a bit like a drowned rat or dog with my tail between my legs. She invited me to stay with them. And I stayed with Dick and Alice for 3 months. And they kind of adopted me as their daughter. And consequently, I was at family dinners, Thanksgivings, Christmases. Sorry when I tell it like this. I'm so overwhelmed by their kindness and their amazing support of me. And I also think, Dick thought I was a rather peculiar item. But, he was always very gracious and friendly and helpful. But Alice and I were really pals. And we were happy carnivores, bourbon drinking. And later in life, Alice and I would conspire to avoid the vegetarian regimentation and go out and eat steak. And sort of step around the general case against Alice eating sweets. But in the course of all of this, Leslie and I became very close friends because we ended up looking after her mother together. And then when her mother died, Johan and I were also around the time that Alice died with her. And after that, we really were kind of a unit, the three of us actually. And so in the course of her life and ours, we were very close. And then as Leslie got ill, we were the closest close friends, literally physically closely, which is how we ended up taking her to hospital and doing all these other things. So the past 5 years were very difficult for Leslie. And it's a tribute to her strength of character that she never complained. And the other part of her character, which is a little more irritating, was that she never admitted when she really needed help and when things were going badly for her, which made it rather difficult. An example of the extremity of this, I don't know what you call it actually, one night she fell and she really hurt herself. She fell about 2 o'clock at night. Yeah, Yvonne remembers this. She waited until 7 o'clock in the morning before calling us to take her to the emergency room so as not to interrupt our sleep. So what do you do in a case like that? God damn it, Leslie, why didn't you call us when you failed? Because then she had all these hours of pain out of some kind of mistaken consideration for our sleep. So, this is the whole thing with my relationship to Leslie. It's two-sided. One of deep frustration, get help, ask for help, draw in all of you, or keep these various, what do we call it, fiefdoms, dukedoms, completely independent from one another. Because I often had no idea who you are as a person but I'd heard your names. And the consequences, as I gather, there is the early Leslie group, I think. The Ellen Bronze is from New York. Because the history is, Dick and Alice lived in New York City. Leslie was born there, and she left when she was 9 years old, and came to California. They lived first in a wee house close to the beach in San Francisco, and then moved in the Clayton Street house. And then she started, well, she was already in school, and that's where she met a lot of you. And I'm amazed about her close ties to her high school friends. I mean, Shoshana, Susan, I can't remember if you were a high school friend or an earlier friend.
Shoshana era.
Yeah.
Shoshana era.
Yeah.
When she was still Susan.
Exactly.
Right. And then as Leslie went to San Francisco State and got her credentials, she also then became a flamenco dancer. And I was amazed. I didn't know she took belly dancing. Did you know that? And then, of course, she had her amazing jewelry business. Then she had a lot of hardship around its end, and suffered betrayal. And then she cultivated many interests and her friends. I mean, she did so much work for her friends. And parallel with that was her dedication to her father's legacy, that his art not be forgotten. And she and Lincoln and several other people produced this wonderful book, which...
It's right there.
Yeah,
Right there.
Right there.
Oh, yeah. In black.
Oh, right.
To the right.
Behind.
Here it is. And there is still a website.
Oh, that's
And he still has artwork. Or I guess I should say I have his artwork. But I want it to find good homes. So if any of you have any ideas, Lincoln offered to give me some advice, and I will follow up on that immediately, because another aspect of our dear friend is she didn't throw anything.
Repeat yourself.
She didn't throw anything out as an aspect of our dear friend.
And she did collect.
And she collected, yeah.
And she collected many, many
Extreme
things.
collecting.
Yes.
Not hoarding. Collecting.
If you say so.
Extreme collecting.
Yes.
She had good taste.
Right.
Accumulator.
Yes, but the practical application of that is, in my position coming into her home, filled with baskets, boxes, trunks, suitcases, you name it, there's always something in them. And then there's even more in that already material in those trunks. So that's a kind of, there's a name for this, where things go, like the Bushka dolls.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
Anyway,
He's really good at that.
I'm just so grateful and happy to meet all of you who have been names and concepts, far more than just names, actually, because she talked about you, and yet she didn't let me in to your particular worlds. And that makes it peculiar in a way, because I feel this is sort of like a meeting of the Reichsordnung, where all the states meet for once, the states. And I do hope that you all learn about each other. And the other question, of course, for us all is the extent to which we wish to preserve Leslie's legacy and how we might do that. I mean, there is Susan is busy with a
What did she say?
collection of,
You're busy with legacy.
oh, yes, Susan.
Yes, you wanted to say something?
Well, not quite yet, but sure. And there's a book of people, a small book of remembrances that people have sent to me via email floating around somewhere over there. So the other thing I want to say is Leslie did have a family, a Correll family. And politically, they were definitely not of the same variety. However, she has an amazing second cousin, Jill Correll, who is also one of the trustees of Leslie's estate, Leslie. And this woman is phenomenal. And there was a picture floating around of a firefighter, and it's disappeared.
It was in the box.
Well, yeah, but I had it out.
It might be right back there.
Yeah,
It's in the front of the
maybe
box.
it's underneath that white binder. There was a big picture. Oh, I think that may be underneath the white binder there.
That's great.
No?
I do too.
We'll keep looking.
Oh,
There it
right
is,
here.
there it is.
Yeah.
I have a picture on my phone.
Oh,
yeah.
yes.
Oh, wow.
So this is Jill.
Leslie Miller.
Right.
Jill the fire?
And I personally think Jill's the cat's pajamas myself because she's a woman who knows how to get things done. And so she has very much regretted that she's not here to meet and experience Leslie's world. Unfortunately, when I asked her about the date, she said it was okay, and then she had a too firm a commitment. So I would like to read you what she sent.
Cousin.
Leslie was more than my cousin. She was a steady source of encouragement and support throughout my life. From the time I was young, she took a genuine interest in me and the things I loved. I'll always remember how she shared my passion for animals, especially horses, and how special it made me feel to have her attention and kindness. As I grew older and chose a career path that wasn't exactly conventional for a woman, a firefighter, Leslie never hesitated to cheer me on. She and her mom, Alice, always celebrated my efforts and made me feel proud of who I was becoming. I still have every book Leslie gave me, each one with her thoughtful inscriptions inside, reminders of her warmth, generosity, and belief in me. Now, as the last Correll woman from our small family, I feel it's my duty to carry on that strength, grace, and encouragement that Leslie so naturally embodied. She will be deeply missed, but her love and spirit will always remain with me. So there, that's Jill from some years
It's an
ago.
amazing resemblance.
And Jill, I have to say, not only is she a wonderful person to work with in dealing with Leslie's possessions and her house, but she is probably the most liberated woman I have ever met. In the sense, too, one of the other reasons she's probably not too unhappy not to be here is a few days ago, a patient attacked the emergency room doctor. She continues to work 17 years as a firefighter, and for the last 10 or so as an EMT in Sutter Davis emergency room. So a patient attacked the nurse and really was trying to beat him up. So Jill jumped right in. And they were able to subdue the patient. But as a consequence, she hit her head on the floor. She has a big shiner. I don't think she'd really want everybody to see it. Anyway, that the successor to the Correll name, because she's the last one, unbelievable to me, because Dick had something like 8 siblings.
Wow.
And yes, he came from a big family.
I never knew that.
Yes. And, you know, they worked all over the Pacific Northwest. But not many of them had children.
It's just amazing.
So, that was really what I wanted to say, and I want to invite those of you, like Susan, who would like to say something else.
Okay, want me to come up there?
Yeah, people can see you.
I want to say thank you for that.
Yes.
Beautiful. Some of you or all of you may know Pat Ferrero. And Pat and I met a few years ago when Leslie and I went up there for a visit, and Pat called me up recently and said, would you like to do a booklet with me about Leslie? And I said, yeah, I'd love to. And I've done some book work myself and published some things. So she said, would you be happy to do something like with people's reminiscences and whatever they like to say about Leslie, and maybe photos, pictures, whatever they would like to contribute, and we'll just go through and choose what would be appropriate for a booklet. So I said, I'm in. So we're gonna do that. And hopefully it will be out, ready maybe in the next 4 or 5 months. And I invite everybody here who wishes to participate to sign up, put your email, your name and your email, and then send anything to me or to Pat Ferrero. And I have my email out there on the guest book, and I'm the first one. So, or you can always ask Anne if you forget. So that's what I would like to say. And so I look forward to seeing what anybody has to say. Okay?
Great, thank you.
Do you want photographs too? Everything.
Everything.
Sure. Anything. Anything and everything.
I'm going to
Let me just explain.
read something.
Shoshana, is one of Leslie's oldest friends and is not in a good way right now, so she could not be here. So she sent this remembrance, which Mike is going to read.
Remembering my dear friend Leslie.
Could you hear me?
Leslie and I began our friendship in our first semester of high school in 1958. It was a friendship that lasted over 6 decades. I considered her one of my closest friends of all time. One of our shared interests was clothing and costumes from all over the world. She and I taught a psychology of clothing class together at Fiberworks in Berkeley. As all of you know, she was a gifted jewelry designer with a flair for dressing herself in uniquely fashionable outfits that she put together from items that she would find in secondhand clothing stores. Hers was a gorgeous wardrobe put together over years on a shoestring. Just like her home, full of thrift shop pleasures, she was the most aesthetic person I've known. This was only one very small aspect of Leslie as a person. As an only child, she was a devoted daughter and niece and took care of her father, aunt, and mother in their last years. She adored her father, an artist who understood and supported her own artistic endeavors, and published a book about him and his artwork after he died. Like her parents, she cared passionately about social justice, and while shy in certain circumstances, was fiercely outspoken when it came to standing up for others. Many years ago, I might have teased her about being a goody two-shoes, which is in quotations, but that was just a facet of her extreme scrupulousness and integrity. She was one of the most responsible persons I've ever known, and I was certainly the beneficiary of her virtues. My earliest journal entry about Leslie's struggles with lung infections is from 2014. For the following 11 years, even when she was physically weak, she was still helping others. Once, while visiting her, I watched, almost too tired to get out of bed, her go across the street to her neighbor's house to feed their cat. She was very courageous. So many memories of Leslie. Dick and Alice Correll, the friends we had in common, the celebrations, her garden and pond with lilies are tumbling down around me as I write. And it's hard to choose which ones to elaborate on. Many of you will add your own stories today. I cannot end my brief contribution without acknowledging Anne Maclachlan, who along with her husband Johan, he's disappeared somewhere, right in front of me. Johan and Zande looked at Leslie for years, taking her to the hospital in the night, bringing her groceries, handling her financial and legal affairs, and assisting Leslie in all ways right up to her death and more. So that's Johan. New York Blues.
Others might know?
I'm Ellen, from Sacramento, and Leslie and Alice and Dick were family friends in New York. I've known her since she was preteen. I have a photo of her, I think she must be 8, sitting in the park, you know. And over the years, we stayed in touch, and she came to Sacramento and spoke about the book, the Dick Correll book, with another friend from the Bay Area who had written a book, a novel. And so the two of them, we arranged for them to go to a place called Luna's in Sacramento, which was a gathering spot for poets and other artistic folks. And I'm having a hard time remembering the other lady's name, but it was really well received, and I'm so glad we had, and I have some photos from that event. And we adorned the walls of Luna's with some Dick Correll art that I took off my walls for that purpose. So it was really good. And just over the years, the Corrells were like a second family for me. I was having troubled teen years, and they invited me to come and be with them for a couple of weeks in San Francisco. They lived in the Haight at that time. And that was really eye-opening for me. Even though my parents were progressive and such, they were not as sophisticated as Dick and Alice Correll. And Leslie, also, I'm a distant relative. Actually, not my children are blood relatives of the Corrells through the Moyer side. Leslie did a family tree thing.
Yeah.
I had a stroke in January, so not very good at speaking anymore. Anyway, they were always very supportive of me, you know, in particular, in terms of our politics and so on. So I will contribute some photos. And I already sent some photos to people by email. So.
I'll mention that I didn't know her nearly as well as I know that many of you did. I met her back in about 2005 through my late partner Bob Murphy. She and Bob had been an item for a while in San Francisco in the late 60s, when he was in school there. They were in school together. And then to some extent they kept in touch over the years. And then when he relocated to California from the East Coast, they reconnected as friends and were pretty good friends. So I met him when he and I got together in 2005. I met her through him. And what she and I discovered was that we had a lot of things in common, independent of Bob, entirely independent of Bob. We were both daughters of, firstborn daughters, and she was the only daughter of artists who worked in the same, artists of the same era, doing studio work and WPA projects and stuff. Her father on the West Coast, my mother and father in Chicago. And so we both had the sense of, as daughters, as only daughters, of the legacy of our parents' artwork and the problem of how to do right by them when they went and died without having done it themselves. But we were both childless cat ladies. We were both really interested. We were both artisans. She was working metal, I was working in clay. We were both interested in so-called ethnic textiles and clothing, so we would go sometimes with Sherry to museums and such. And we also were gardeners and loved gardening. When my partner, one of the things about Leslie was, one of the things especially that I remembered, and there was one necklace I actually was hoping to get here, only one, but it doesn't seem to be here, and that's fine. She had a necklace that she wore once when we went out to lunch that was nothing but a lot of mother of pearl buttons sewed together on cord. And to me that epitomized. No, those are different. Those are quite different.
They're mother of pearl.
No, they're very different type of necklace. Yeah, I saw all of them there. But what to me it epitomized was that she could pull together something super stylish with an economy of means. And she always did look stylish. The other thing that's a particular memory was my partner Bob died quite suddenly in Mexico. And he and I were a committed couple, but by choice maintained separate apartments, separate one-bedroom apartments, half a block from each other. So, and we each had cats that were incompatible. And so when he died quite suddenly, Leslie and I spent a month clearing out his apartment, dealing with all of his, because he was a collector too, art objects and stuff, and dealing with his stuff and trying to find a home for his cat, who was a lovely, sweet cat, but was 13 years old, and it's not always so easy to find a good home for a 13-year-old cat. So I could not take Callie. We couldn't, in a month, we couldn't find a good home. So after a month, when we had to, his landlord wanted to rent the apartment here. His landlord was very gracious, but still, he wanted to have his apartment back. So I had a one-bedroom apartment with no way to separate the spaces from my cat to Callie. Leslie, with a house, was able to separate. So Leslie took on taking care of Callie until we could find a home. Now the problem with Callie was, Callie also wanted to be an only cat. Leslie's cat wanted to be an only cat, so they could not come together. And out of stress, Callie, who was living in the front room of Leslie's house, would pee out of stress on some of Leslie's belongings, which you can imagine how upset Leslie was about that.
Cat pee.
Yeah, because cat pee, even a textile, even her pillows made out of the most wonderful textiles, they weren't color fast than cat pee. So Leslie was having to lose some of the items, but she stayed with it, and she was still a good sport about continuing to try to help Callie find a home. We finally did find a home, but it was like she was such a good sport about things. She was, even when it meant a level of sacrifice to her,
Right.
she was willing to do it. She was willing to do what needed to be done.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was it. And I knew of her illness. I knew, and I would look after her garden sometimes, water her garden sometimes, on occasions when she couldn't. But she would always, the other thing, on Bob's birthday, she would always email me. We would get together for lunch periodically, and we would make plans, and then sometimes during the past 5 years or so, the plans would fall through because she had to make another hospital visit, or return out she was in the hospital. But we were just emailing back in the first week of July, making very tentative plans for lunch in August. And It just was one of those things. It just didn't happen. Anyway, but she was such a trooper. She was really
Yes.
and a good spirited soul.
Absolutely. Yeah. Great, thank you. Other observations?
I'm sure there are.
Oh, I suspect there are.
I can share something.
Yes.
Is it okay if I just stand here?
Of course.
Yeah, so Leslie and I had a difference in age, but I felt a real closeness to her. She came into my life through my great uncle Herb Green, who she had a relationship with for several years. I thought it was 5 years. Susan said, no, it's 2. I think it might be 3. But she was with him, and they met, later in my uncle's life. For me, it was really immediate to recognize the specialness of Leslie as a person, as a creative person. I had a really deep admiration for how creativity kind of just burst out of her, in not just in her work, but also in her personality, in the way that she carried herself. She was hilarious. I mean, she just always had us laughing. She was so funny. I loved when she would speak in Yiddish, and she just would say things in such a poignant way when something difficult was happening. And so when their relationship ended, our relationship did not, and we continued to be close. We would see each other, not nearly as much as I wanted. Leslie was struggling a lot with her health, so it was difficult, to need to give her space and a lot of distance. But whenever we would talk, she was so concerned about, my well-being, and she listened so intently. I always felt terrible. I would just talk on and on, about all the troubles that I'm going through, and she cared so much, and she worried about me a lot. And so it was a surprise that she passed away for me. It was a surprise, but I feel just this gratitude for her, and to be here to share that with all of you.
Thank you.
Sweet, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, can I get a few words now? I'm not going to be shy. I'm not going to be hilarious or anything like that. But let me tell you, it's a little bit too quiet in here for me. Can I get a big round of applause for Leslie? A life well lived. Let me tell you. Oh, yeah. I like it like that. We met in junior high school, circa 1957. And I go over to visit her almost every day. The Corrells, angels, saints, forever in my heart, clear. I got no animosity or anything against the Corrells, let me tell you. She'd say, would you like a sandwich? And you'd go in the kitchen and she would fix me these fabulous sandwiches. Well, one day I walked in the house and her mother handed me a book, Birth Control. Yeah, her daughter was feeding me and she knew when the hunger came up, okay, I'd be going by there at 11, 12 o'clock at night, throwing pebbles up at the window, and Leslie would come down and we would hug and kiss a little bit. Then, about the time we graduated high school, she went to State College, I went to City College. I didn't think I was smart enough for State College, but I flunked out of City College. I ran into a girl. I was studying architecture, but her architecture was more appealing. So I dropped out of there. Anyway, to let you know how I feel about Leslie Correll. I've always been a singer. I'm going to wrap it up with this. And if you know this verse, the shadow of your smile when you are gone. see all the lovely things you are to me. And I'm going to end it right there. Can we get another round of applause for Leslie Correll? I spent more time with Dick and Alice today than in 30 years.
I come to
All right.
I have a few words.
Yes, but the key is
I'm a
too
little
low.
bit late, so I don't know what's been said
The key is
before.
much
And
too
I'm
low.
coming straight from the airport. I would have put on a brighter color for Leslie, but I didn't have time, and here I am. There's so many things that I could say, but I know I'm not gonna keep you here the rest of the night. Because I love to hear the stories that I've heard, and to tell you what I thought of Leslie, I'm gonna share a few things. But I'm gonna tell you two older stories in our mature life that was, I don't know, coincidental, whatever. My brother was a seaman, and he was my older brother by at least 10 years. And he used to travel all over the world, and he liked Seattle. And he would come and visit the Corrells all the time, no matter where he was coming from. I remember Alex calling me and saying, "Guess who's coming to dinner?" And that was right around the time that movie was so popular. So at any rate, because we didn't know where he was half of the time, that was one that just I remember always. Another time I was coming with our local union to Berkeley, and I called the Corrells, and they couldn't believe I was coming to the same conference that they were going to be attending in Berkeley. So it was at Berkeley University, Berkeley College, and it was all for workers, and that's what they were all about from the very beginning. So those are just two bits of pieces, and that was in our more adult life. So when I got the notice about Leslie, I wrote this little note, so I'm going to read this because it kind of focuses on what I would like you to kind of know. The Correll family left New York City in 1951. I still live in New York City. Dick and Alice were friends with my parents, Aurelio and Florence Judah. The Corrells lived directly across the street from us in Washington Heights, a Manhattan, New York neighborhood that has come to be known as the Heights. I was the youngest of 5 siblings. Leslie was a few months younger than I was, and an only child. Her parents regularly enlisted my parents to allow me to visit, travel, and have even nap time together between 1945 and 1951. We did everything together. When the Corrells made their decision to return to the West Coast permanently, they neglected to share it with us because they were afraid we were going to be too upset. So they left on vacation. Our parents were concerned that we would be too impacted negatively, so that was not told. I got a letter from Leslie some months later telling me that they have moved for good. Later, writing became my most enjoyable activity. We wrote weekly. We maintained communication and several visits through these years. We shared family events and visits from my other family members. I mentioned my brother Frank, who traveled often, visited, and he refinished the wooden table in her kitchen, if any of you know that marble. He sanded and finished that table.
I have that table.
You should.
I
I have a picture of it here.
that's great.
Oh my goodness.
God, that's so.
So, when he refinished the wooden table in Leslie's kitchen, which is still visible in the picture that I can find right now, Alice called one day and said, "Guess who's coming to dinner?" It was Frank coming to dinner. Alice using the title of the then popular Sidney Poitier Audrey Hepburn movie from 1967. Several years were made by me along with my several visits were made with me along with my husband and more recently my daughter Sonia, who is with me today. Sonia was able to stay at the Correll Hotel, as Leslie recalls, as Leslie named her Coronado Street home. Sasha was a friend that was from Washington Heights during our earliest years. Who moved to the West Coast always. I have not been able to get in touch with Sasha and know about Sasha. So I've come today and I hope to hear some of the details and the invitation. I could go on forever with the wonderful memories that span a friendship over the past 75 years. My kindest regards. Can't wait to hear from you. That was me saying that. One of the things, as I've heard from everybody, their house was open. Their house was open. When I tell people now in this time that Leslie and I used to make Dick cigarettes on the machine, we learned how to operate that little machine, and it was tobacco. So those are some of the things. But I says I can actually remember being in the crib taking the naps with Leslie, and that was our life. But they introduced me to a whole different life than even my siblings had, because I went to the museums with them, we went camping up into the Connecticut countryside, whatever it was we did. We sold lifesavers on 162nd Street in Washington Heights and buy a pack, separate them and so this, I could go on and on. It was such a good thing. I just decided that I had to come and just get some of the spirit of her friends that I knew I didn't know, but I knew that we were connected. Thank you so much for all of you, and
Thank you.
I'd like to say just a few words, because somebody mentioned Fireworks, which was a place I started in Berkeley in 1973, and there are a number of people in this room. Without those people, it could never have happened. But Leslie was very important. I was living with Leslie as of about 1970 in a wonderful little duplex apartment that she got in Rockridge area, Hudson Street, I think it was. She had a slightly larger part of it up the stairs, and we would say, okay, goodbye. She'd go that way. I'd go to my little place. It worked beautifully for me. She was so supportive of me, inspired me so much. She had an anvil in her studio area, and I would hear her. There are some people wearing things that I think she might have been tapping the metal to make those beautiful things that she made. She was a remarkably creative person, inspired me endlessly, and contributed wonderful things at Fireworks. People loved her, they loved her creativity, they learned from her. And so I just wanted to say that I have deep appreciation, love, and thanks to my wonderful friend from the 70s, not from that cradle you were in.
Well, I didn't have all the 70s with us.
But a person who really made my life so much better.
Yes.
Every day.
Yes. Yes.
Well, I would like to say that I'd like to photograph some of you who have now adopted another beautiful necklace of Leslie's before you leave. It'll be a lovely thing, I think. You all look wonderful in these great jewels. So
And she's going to start with a selfie.
Well, now that you mentioned the necklace, here is the one I picked at first. I picked several, I'm sorry to say, I have to confess. But it's just strung together Japanese related items, you know, the kind of the Rima doll and how the very teeny tiny folded sculpture by the Japanese. They're so clever. And this with a lot of kanji written on it. And it raises my, I think what I wanted to say and question actually is what constituted her affinity for Japanese culture. I know that in terms of aesthetics, yeah, she was very much taken with Japanese aesthetics and fabric and all the things. But I also think that it bespeaks her sympathy for the Japanese Americans when they were interned. And you know, I think maybe that dimension of Leslie's life really should be brought out more. That is to say, she was politically so engaged.
Yes.
You know, it wasn't just the
Yes.
Japanese internment.
Very.
It was, yeah, and even I'm sure she was involved in the No Kings. Yeah.
All of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I did want to bring that up about Leslie. I didn't know her very much, really. I knew her through Anne. And actually, when I think about
Alice.
when I think about Leslie, I really think simultaneously about her mom, who we all loved Alice. But yeah, I didn't know her very well, but I appreciated the steep commitment that she had to making the world fair and equal. So.
Well, I can add to that because in high school, she and I both attended the House of Un-American Activities Committee meeting in City Hall in San Francisco, and they didn't let us in because the Daughters of the American Republic had bought up all the tickets, or were given all the tickets, and they wouldn't let the rest of the public in, and we all got hosed down the stairs. So we have that early high school in common. We were all very active in those days. And it continues through the years. You don't forget those feelings and those ideals.
Right.
Anyway, so it's nice to meet you.
There's a photo in one of these things, Women Don't Buy War,
Mm.
a poster with Leslie.
We got on the front page of the Chronicle. Danny Grossman, maybe you come across his name in trying to contact people. He now lives in Toronto. But he was featured on the front page there as they were hosing us down the stairs.
Unbelievable.
And his father, well, you know, Leslie's parents were very progressive. And a lot of the friends that we had in common, their parents were you know, red diaper babies, I think it was the term then. And my friend Danny Grossman, who later became a very famous dancer, he was one of Nureyev and Friends, you know, remember that? He was one of the friends, Danny Grossman. His father wrote a letter why he was absent from school on Friday was to see democracy in action. Unfortunately, that kind of thing is happening again.
I'm sorry.
This isn't the first time, but we'll get through this. We just have to stick together.
That's right.
I just wanted to add, because I've been called a red diaper baby before, but from my mom and just her relationship with Leslie, obviously my mom has always been an activist and always taught me about those lessons and those things that she's learned from her family, including that they integrated their apartment when they left Washington Heights, which is something that she always told me as we still live in New York City. So I did get the opportunity to come visit with Leslie. I think it was in 2018. A friend of mine was getting married here in Alameda, and they're divorced now, but that's neither here nor there. What made me want to say something is because of that activism and everything. I think the room I was staying in Leslie's house, she had the Columbus logs. I don't know what got me into reading the Columbus logs, but I read a good few pages and I was like, what? Like, I knew what happened, but I was like, what really was happening? Like, they came and they really just genocide. But that's what I was reading while I was while I was visiting for the couple of days to go to my friend's wedding. And we went all around, and Leslie would tell me about not wanting to leave her carbon imprint, and she made French pressed coffee for me, and we went to the farmers market, and it was really such an impactful couple of days. I mean, through growing up, we had come to San Francisco, and she took me, I think, on that trip when you went to Berkeley. I think I was a teenager. So it was always so impactful, but that last trip that I had here and spent with Leslie was really so impactful for so many reasons, and I'm thankful and really wanted to encourage my mom to make this trip to come here.
Thanks so much.
So Joe and I and Leslie have been on the board of a group called Upper Broadway Advocates. And we wanted more beautiful buildings and more features of the art that had taken place there in its redevelopment. They moved to San Francisco, for those of you that don't know that, and then so some developers had the right to develop the property, and of course originally wanted to put up a 21-story, very ugly high-rise. It'd be different if it was maybe ultra-modern or something interesting, but no, it was pretty ugly. And so Leslie was very involved with our group. She did design the website and the logo and participated in everything. And so for the past 8 years, whatever it's been, I've seen Leslie weekly, if not in person, on Zoom. And she was very much involved, and so her desire for beauty and for affordable housing. So we did get some very low income affordable housing put in, because low income was the same as the average rate in Oakland right now. So it was that wasn't good enough. We didn't get everything we wanted, but we did get quite a bit. So both her activism and her beauty and her artistic skills all came through up to the end.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Yeah. Great.
I got some of those emails.
I'll say something, since I didn't really know Leslie that well, but I was good friends with Dick and Alice. I lived in Rockridge, and my name's Lincoln, and I was my field is social justice artwork. And I was working in a print shop, and Dick and I bonded pretty quickly after being artists, and I helped to introduce him and reconnect him with a lot of this generation, my generation, of Bay Area graphic artists. And he was part of, he was sort of the previous history of this that we all appreciated, because we were standing on the shoulders of our elders. And to see what these people were doing in the 30s and the 40s was really important to us who were doing stuff in the 60s and 70s. And so it was really great to work with Dick, and we had bonded very closely. And after he died, when Leslie said, well, we should do a book, I said, well, let's do it. And so I shot all Dick's stuff. We put the book together. It was really great, and I've continued to sort of promote the artistic legacy of not only Dick and not only his generation, but all the generations of people that layer upon each other to say we need to make this a better world. And creativity and visual art is one of the great tools for doing that. And so I really enjoyed being able to work with Leslie on this, and I continue to help with making sure that his stuff gets exposed. And the University of Washington picked up a bunch of Dick stuff. Whenever there were exhibitions, I sort of helped promote that. But she was just such a, she promoted it not just because it was her dad, but because it represented something deeper and stronger and more important. And so, thank her for that, and I'm sorry she's gone.
Thank you.
Well, let me say, if you talk about a book, when Leslie put together Dick's work and got it published, everybody was excited about it because his work had been so impactful through the years, and if you look at his wood cuts and so forth. So I'm on the board of the Working Theater in New York, which is a working theater for working people, about working people, and at working people prices. So we have a fundraiser every year. So Leslie would send me 2 books to put in the silent auction, and they sold every year, and I still have 2 now for this year coming up. So it's really been a pleasure, and her work, and she would not let me pay her for those books. I said, but Leslie, people bought them, and she said, it's so good to get that out into the universe. She would say, get it out into the universe. So she would send me the books for the auction.
I will add that there are other people of Dick's generation, Bay Area graphic artists, for whom dealing with their artistic legacy has not been easy. Families that are divided about what to do with the stuff, stuff's rotting in storage lockers. Annie and all of you, I encourage you to, if you know people who have stuff, or if you have your own stuff, try to deal with it while you're alive, because your kids are going to want to kill you again if you don't deal with it. They don't understand it. They don't want to deal with it. They've got other stuff. So there are ways to sort of shuffle this along. It's not always easy. It can really be awkward and messy. But try to get a head start on it, because it's one more burden for children or somebody else who opens up that locker and goes, oh my God, what do I do with this?
And keep making art for those
Yes.
who
Yes.
are. We need it more now than ever.
But
Or
I
again.
would say that if you want one of Dick's prints, I'm not going to close down his website. I feel a very strong obligation. So at the moment, please contact me, but I'm arranging that the website stay open with a new email for getting the book. Or also his prints. Yeah. But since you're all here because you love the Correll family, I'm not sure I'm supposed to say this, but as the trustee, there are a lot of his prints in the house. And if you would like one, I think you ought to get one. So keep that in mind, because otherwise I'm going to talk to Lincoln, because I just met him right now, about what to do with it all. But I think there's something so particular about having
An original.
well, no, it's not just that. It's an object that speaks to your principles and represents something.
Your soul.
Yeah.
One of his prints, which is about fire hoses that were used to hose down black protesters in the South during the Civil Rights Movement.
That's the one.
God, fire hose fight back should be on her wall.
Yes,
It really is.
that's right. Yes.
Thank you for hosting.
Yes,
We have someone here.
Years ago, Leslie came on the train with some prints that she donated to the Crocker Art Museum. And I picked her up at the train and we went there, and I got a behind the scenes look at the vault where they keep all the artwork. They have a lot of work on paper at the Crocker. And it seems to me that they should really why not do the graphic arts workshop folks? It's California history, and the Crocker Art Museum in Sacramento, specializes in California history, including labor history.
Well, the Labor History Museum at San Francisco State has several of these things. San Francisco State
Also has
Labor History.
Well, I know that the 3 prints that they have in the Paul Bunyan series from the 30s.
Oh, okay. Excuse me. Because there are many more that are much more.
Yeah, I have 3 of those too. So. Yeah, I don't know what my kids are going to do with all mine. It's worrisome.
Well, if no one else has something to say to the group, I suggest, at least according to my books and Leslie's, we should raise a glass in her memory.
Yes, thank you so much. This was so wonderful.